We have all been there, or at least, we have all dreamed of being there. You meet someone new. Maybe it is a romantic interest, a new best friend, or even a charming business partner. And from the very first moment, everything feels seamless. It feels cinematic. They say the right things, they make the right gestures. And they seem to understand the deepest parts of your soul without you even having to explain yourself. It feels like magic. It feels like destiny. But I am here to tell you something that might be hard to hear. Sometimes, that feeling of perfection is not a sign of a soulmate. Sometimes, it is the first, subtle red flag of a carefully constructed mask. I used to fall for it every single time. I would meet someone who showered me with compliments, who seemed to have zero flaws. And I would think, finally my luck has changed. I would ignore that tiny, quiet voice in the back of my head, that intuition that was trying to tell me that human beings are not supposed to be this flawless. I would silence my gut instinct because the fantasy felt so good. But eventually, the mask would slip. And when it did, the confusion and the pain were far worse than if I had just seen the reality from the start. So, for the next little while, I want to walk you through the anatomy of the too good to be true persona. We are going to unmask this behavior together. We are going to look at why it happens, how to spot it, and most importantly, how to protect your beautiful heart from getting tangled up in an illusion. Let us start with the first and most intoxicating sign: the intensity of their attention. When you are dealing with someone who is wearing a mask of perfection, they often utilize a technique that psychologists call love bombing. Though it can happen in friendships too. It is an overwhelming amount of affection, validation, and interest right out of the gate. They text you constantly. They want to know everything about you. They might tell you that they have never met anyone like you, or that you are the only person who truly gets them. Now, why is this a red flag? Because real connection takes time to build. Trust is earned in drops, not in buckets. When someone dumps a bucket of validation on you after knowing you for 3 days, they are not reacting to you. They are reacting to a fantasy of you. Or they are trying to hook you in quickly, so you do not have time to look closer at who they really are. It feels good, because we all have a hunger to be seen and appreciated. But ask yourself, do they really know me well enough to say these things? Or are they just saying what they know I want to hear? This brings us to the second sign, the phenomenon of mirroring. Have you ever noticed that this person seems to have the exact same interests as you, down to the oddly specific details? You mention you love obscure jazz from the 1920s, and suddenly, they are the world's biggest fan of that genre. You talk about a specific childhood trauma, and they have a story that matches it perfectly. On the surface, this looks like compatibility. We think, wow, we are so alike. But with a manipulative persona, this is actually data collection. They are studying you. They are listening to your likes, your dislikes, your fears, and your dreams. And they are morphing themselves into a reflection of those things. They become a mirror. The problem with a mirror is that there is nothing behind it. If you were to change your opinion tomorrow, they would likely shift theirs too, just to maintain that illusion of perfect harmony. A healthy relationship involves two distinct people with different perspectives who respect each other, not one person and their echo. Another major warning sign is the complete absence of flaws or vulnerability. Think about the people you love and trust the most in your life. They are messy, right? They have bad days. They get cranky when they are hungry. They have insecurities. They make mistakes and have to apologize. That is what makes them human. That is what makes them real. The too good to be true persona does not have bad days. They are always calm, always agreeable, always smiling. If they do admit to a flaw, it is usually a humble brag, something like, "Oh, I just care too much about people." Or, "I am just too much of a perfectionist at work." They never admit to being jealous, or petty, or tired. This relentless positivity can feel refreshing at first, especially if you are used to drama. But over time, it becomes eerie. It feels robotic, and it serves a very specific purpose. It keeps you at arm's length. True intimacy requires vulnerability. It requires showing the ugly parts of ourselves. If someone refuses to show you their cracks, it is because they are terrified that if you see the reality, you will leave. Or, more sinisterly, they are hiding a side of themselves that is dark, controlling, or abusive, and the nice guy or nice girl act is the cover story. I remember meeting a man once who seemed like a saint. He volunteered at 3 different charities, he spoke softly, and he never ever got angry. For months, I thought he was the most evolved human being I had ever met. But I noticed that whenever I tried to talk about something negative, maybe I had a bad day at work, or I was frustrated with a friend, he would gently shut it down. He would say, "Let's just focus on the positive, Jenny." He would spiritually bypass my emotions. At first, I thought he was just being supportive. But I realized later that he was not capable of holding space for real emotion. He needed everything to be shallow and pleasant because he could not handle depth. And when I finally did get angry about something legitimate, that perfect facade shattered completely, and the rage underneath was terrifying. The perfect behavior was a lid on a pressure cooker. Let us talk about the speed of the relationship. This is closely related to the intensity we discussed earlier, but it is about the timeline of milestones. A person wearing a mask often wants to lock things down immediately. They push for commitment, for exclusivity, or for high-stakes business partnerships before you have even had a chance to see them in different contexts. They might say things like, "Why wait when we know it is right?" They try to bypass your logical brain and appeal to your emotional impulses. They create a false sense of urgency. This is dangerous because it isolates you. If you are swept up in a whirlwind romance or a fast-paced friendship, you stop checking in with your other support systems. You stop asking your friends for their perspective. You get trapped in the bubble they have created, and within that bubble, the dynamic starts to shift. This is the bait and switch. Once they feel they have you hooked, once you are emotionally invested, or financially involved, or living together, the mask starts to come off. But it does not happen all at once. It happens in tiny, confusing increments. The person who was once endlessly complimentary makes a small, sarcastic comment about your appearance. When you look hurt, they laugh and say, "Oh, you are too sensitive, I was just joking." This is gaslighting. They use their previous perfect behavior as a shield. You think, "But he is so nice. He could not have meant it that way." You start doubting your own perception of reality because it conflicts with the character they introduced you to. They rely on the halo effect, established in the beginning, to get away with bad behavior later. You keep waiting for the perfect version of them to come back. You think, "If I just explain myself better, or if I am just a better partner, they will be that wonderful person again." But that wonderful person never existed. That was the advertisement. The reality is what you are seeing now. It is heartbreaking to realize this. I know it is. It feels like a betrayal of the highest order, because you did not just fall for a person. You fell for a promise. You fell for the idea that you were safe. So, how do we spot these people before we get too deep? How do we differentiate between a genuinely kind, compatible person and a manipulator in disguise? First, listen to your body. Our bodies often know the truth before our brains do. When you are with this person, do you feel calm and grounded, or do you feel buzzy, anxious, and hyperalert? That butterflies feeling we are taught to interpret as love is often actually our nervous system signaling a threat. If you feel like you are walking on eggshells, or if you feel like you have to perform to keep them happy, that is a major sign. Second, test their boundaries. This is the ultimate litmus test. A genuinely kind person respects boundaries. A manipulator hates them. Try saying no to a small request. Cancel a plan because you are tired. Disagree with their opinion on a movie. Watch their reaction closely. Does the perfect mask slip? Do they get cold? Do they try to guilt trip you? Do they become sullen or silent? A healthy person might be disappointed, but they will say, "Okay, I understand. Maybe next time." A person wearing a mask will take your no as a personal attack because it threatens their control. If they cannot handle a small no, they certainly cannot handle a real relationship. Third, look at their history. Do they have long-term friends? Do they have good relationships with their family? Or at least a nuanced understanding of why those relationships are difficult? Or is every ex-partner crazy? Is every former boss a tyrant? If they paint themselves as the perpetual victim or the perpetual hero in every story, be very careful. Real life is rarely that black and white. Also, pay attention to how they treat people who can do nothing for them. How do they treat the server at the restaurant? How do they treat the cleaning staff? The too good to be true persona is often strictly reserved for their target. The mask is heavy, so they take it off when they think no one important is watching. If they are charming to you but rude to the waiter, the rudeness is the real them. I want to take a moment to speak to the part of you that attracts this kind of dynamic. Often, we fall for the perfect savior because we are carrying a deep wound of unworthiness. We feel like we are not enough on our own, so we crave someone who will come in and complete us. We crave that validation to prove that we are lovable. The manipulator senses this void. They know exactly where your insecurities live, and they pour their fake love right into those cracks. If you feel ugly, they tell you you are the most beautiful person in the world. If you feel unintelligent, they treat you like a genius. It is a drug, and they are the dealer. The only way to truly immunize yourself against this is to work on your own self-worth. When you know, deep in your bones, that you are valuable simply because you exist, you stop being so hungry for external validation. When you love yourself, the over-the-top flattery does not feel like a lifeline. It feels suspicious. You start to prefer the quiet, steady, imperfect love of someone who sees you clearly, over the blinding, flashy, fake love of someone who is putting on a show. I want you to know that real love, whether it is romantic or platonic, is slow. It is steady. It is boring sometimes. It involves awkward silences and disagreements and compromising on what to eat for dinner. It is not a Disney movie. It is not a roller coaster. It is a slow-burning fire that keeps you warm, not a firework that explodes and leaves you in the dark. If you are currently dealing with someone who is confusing you, someone who switches between perfect and cruel, please trust your gut. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are picking up on inconsistencies that are real. Do not let their nice moments gaslight you into accepting their bad behavior. It is okay to walk away from something that looks perfect on paper if it feels wrong in your soul. It is okay to choose being single and safe over being in a relationship that drains your spirit. You deserve a love that is real. You deserve a friend who is authentic. You deserve to be surrounded by people who own their flaws, who apologize sincerely, and who love you for your messiness, not your compliance. Let us practice finding beauty in the imperfection. Let us value consistency over intensity. Let us value actions over words. The next time you meet someone who seems to have stepped out of a romance novel, take a breath. Step back, observe, take your time. Time is the enemy of the mask. The longer you wait, the heavier the mask becomes, and eventually it will drop. You have the power to protect your peace. You have the wisdom to see the truth. Do not be afraid to use it. Thank you so much for being here with me today. It takes courage to look at these things, to admit that we might have been fooled, or that we are vulnerable to these dynamics. But that awareness is your armor. As we wrap up this conversation, I want to leave you with a thought. The most perfect thing you will ever find is not another person. It is the peace you cultivate within yourself. When you have that, you will never settle for a fake version of love again. Stay strong, stay aware, and keep shining that beautiful light of yours. I will see you in the next one.